Look who is joining me. If you're watching on vsin.com, you'll see that I am no longer alone at the desk. Jason Weingarten, he does great work here at vsin. You're able to catch so much of his written work at vsin.com. He puts out so many great articles, a lot of them involving the futures market. Joining me in studio, Jason, great to have you aboard. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I love being here in person.
I love having you in person as well. And Jason, I know the real reason why you came is to take a look at the CBI and to be able to get down all your shekels on it. No, wait, never mind. You're here because of the NCAA tournament, but it just so happened that there's a lot of events that you're very heavy on that, you know what, they're all going down right now. Take me through what your weekend has been like, because I know that you do a great job of taking a look at baseball. I know you've dove in a little bit earlier than I have, doing a great job with the World Baseball Classic, and that seems to be where you've actually made a lot of your money this weekend.
Yeah, the World Baseball Classic has been not only a boon for betting, but it's just been such an enjoyable experience for watching baseball. I'm now a little disappointed that the regular season is going to start and that the games just aren't going to be as intense. And there's a lot of people that don't like WBC, but it's been very, very fun to watch. It's the USA game last night's probably the best baseball game I've watched in a couple of years at least. So.
Oh, that game was so awesome. The game against Cuba was a little bit more of a blowout, but certainly that game against Venezuela, high quality action there. And are there any takeaways that you're going to be able to get from watching the World Baseball Classic that could translate to the regular season? Because I saw Luis Arias have a multi-home run game, and not that I think that he's hitting 50 bombs here or anything like that for Minnesota, but he was very much a singles guy, just being able to get on base, move the line for Minnesota. And I think that if he can provide a little bit more power, be able to ascend, give you like 15, 20 home runs, that could be big for the Twins.
You mean for the Marlins now?
For the Marlins, yeah.
Well, I would love to talk about the Marlins in a minute, but I think one of the takeaways from the WBC is that a lot of the hitters, getting to face such high-intensity pitching early in March, it'll help them at the beginning of the season, because a lot of times batters just they don't get enough at bats in spring training, and you need to work on your timing, and it takes time to hit at a professional level. So a lot of these guys are going to come back and they're just going to feast on pitching after seeing Yu Darvish or Roque Sasaki tomorrow, who I'm excited to see pitch against Mexico. But it's going to benefit a lot of the hitters who participated. It will also benefit pitchers, but the hitters will be the most beneficial.
And I was about to just ask about that as well, because I do think that it does provide a very good opportunity for these guys, and I do think that we're going to see the stars be able to ascend a little bit more. But how much do you need to take into account the fact that guys like Yu Darvish, who you just mentioned, are throwing some of these innings right now? Granted, they're on quite a bit of a restriction, so it's not like we're going to be seeing Yu Darvish go out there and give like a 100-plus pitch performance or anything like that. But how much do you fear that perhaps in like late August, early September, that these guys are partaking in the WBC, they might be wearing down just a little bit more than normal?
It doesn't bother me too much because of the limitations round by round, and most of these guys, they'd be getting that work in spring training anyways. You saw 65 pitch limits and then go up to 95 pitch limits for the knockout rounds. That's about what these guys would be throwing on the back end of spring training. So you'll probably see some fatigue later on in the season, but a lot of that stuff would be happening regardless of if they'd pitched these high intensity innings early. And I don't think it's something to worry about too much.
I think that that's a good note as well, because with spring training, I feel like there's a lot of people that sometimes you don't know necessarily how spring training goes for guys, and I do think that it is very important to note how a guy, especially the pitchers, are getting in their work. I think that's a little bit less critical for batters. You don't want a guy that hasn't seen a single spring training pitch, and you want to be banking on them hitting like 40-plus home runs or anything like that. But I do think for pitchers, just them having their normal workflow in spring training is very significant, and taking a look at the guys that are not getting in their work, it's something that is a big advantage going into the season. Like, I remember last year fading a lot of Zach Wheeler in the first month of the year because it felt like it was stop, start for him. He had a really bad first month, and then once he was able to get on his normal routine, he had a relatively good season last year. Is that something that you've been taking a look at a lot as well?
Yeah, there's always guys like Wheeler, take time to get going in the regular season. And a lot of times veterans, they just take longer to get their arms going and get the season started. And that's the thing. It's such a long season. A lot of times we just really get caught up in what's going on in April. And, by the end of the season, a lot of the early stuff is pretty negligible. It's, I would actually like to cut spring training in half at this point. But, yeah, I'm ready for the season to start.
Yeah, because a lot of these pitchers and catchers, they already reported a little bit longer than a month ago. We're now 10 to 11 days, depending upon when you listen to this, away from the regular season, and I'm right there with you. I am set to get the season started as well. Fortunately for me, with doing mainly college basketball and baseball, very seamless transition. Once we get the Final Four, we're going to have baseball getting started, so I won't have to try to really handicap both sports at the same time, so it's going to be a nice, clean break there. And just in terms of the World Baseball Classic, I did mention one guy that I was very impressed with Luis Arias, that multi-home run game that we saw over the weekend. What about a few standouts that you've been taking note of that maybe they've been surprising you, and maybe you think that they're going to lend a little bit more to their team this year than they have in the past?
Randy Rosarena, who obviously is already a well-known star, I think he's probably still a little underrated, and I was really impressed with his performance for Team Mexico so far. I think Ronald Acuna has looked good for Venezuela. I'm looking forward to seeing him 100% healthy this year. Obviously, I watched a lot of Team USA, turned into a big Trey Turner fan this weekend. Not that I didn't like him before, but I think he's going to have a great season. Potential MVP candidate. Probably actually going to go downstairs after this and drop a little money on Trey Turner for the MVP.
Like it.
On my way out of town. But I can go through a list. I can go deep in players I've been impressed with. But I think tomorrow with the Mexico Japan game, this is going to be the first time a lot of people are exposed to Roque Sasaki, who's the next big prospect to come out of Japan. I don't even know how much money he's going to get when he signs with an MLB team, but if you're not familiar with him, he threw a perfect game with, I think, 19 strikeouts this last season in the Japanese Baseball League, and followed it up with 8 perfect innings in his next start, giving up a leadoff hit in the 9th inning. But this guy is the real deal. He's going to face major league hitters in Team Mexico tomorrow, and it would not surprise me to see him put on an absolute show. If you're a fan of baseball, the Mexico-Japan game tomorrow is must view for you and for me.
And do you have any sort of a lean on that game? Because right now, where we sit at Circa, I'm right now seeing Japan as a minus 245 favorite, total of 8 with a little bit of shading to the under. And you mentioned it with Sasaki. I mean, this guy is absolutely incredible. I can't say that I'm necessarily like the aforementioned expert when it comes to MPB, but I've seen a little bit of it, and I can certainly vouch for what you're saying. This guy is absolutely tremendous. And if anything, I would probably be leaning a little bit more to an under in this spot, because I do think that he's going to go out there and throw a gem.
Yeah, I agree with the shade to the under. Wouldn't surprise me if it gets to 7.5 tomorrow. Not very excited about laying a big number with Japan here. I think it's going to be a good game. Mexico can win. I think there were a lot of sharp people betting Mexico on the futures early. And, with America in Team USA in the final, I don't know if I want them to face Mexico or Japan. Either one of them is going to be an amazing championship game to end this tournament. But I don't have a side for tomorrow at the moment. Lean under.
And how much of a favorite do you think that Team USA is going to be in the final? Because we did see that Venezuela line be relatively tight against Team Cuba. You had to lay minus 380 with Team USA. It turned out to not be a sweat at all. But what are you expecting that line to be, regardless of Mexico/Japan? Because obviously, against Japan, that's going to be a much tighter line.
The last World Baseball Classic, I don't recall what the Japan-USA line was at Dodger Stadium, but it was one of the best baseball games I've ever attended. I think the Team USA won 1-0 in the semifinal. Wouldn't surprise me to see that game close around a pick. Mexico, it'll be interesting. I think the U.S. is still going to be a favorite in a rematch, but Mexico did beat the U.S. in the pool round, so that'll probably get some people's attention. For me, if we do get a Mexico-U.S. rematch, I will be all over Team USA, so I hope it opens low, but USA is going to be the right side versus Mexico.
And I know when it comes to non-regular season sports, a lot of people always fear motivation. Trey Turner, you were mentioning a little bit before, he called the hit that he got against Venezuela one of the biggest that he's ever gotten. So I do think that these guys, they're certainly going to be giving you a really good effort, and it's going to be high-quality baseball. And a high-quality man is joining me right now on the desk, and Jason Weingarten. And coming in next, we've got to talk about what we've all been seeing in the NCAA tournament with him. That's coming up on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Jason, who does amazing work here at VSiN, Jason Weingarten is joining me, and one of those stories that VSiN Pro subscribers are going to be getting is your write-up in terms of the Miami Marlins. I know that you're taking a look at their win total. Take me through what you're going to be betting on for them and what you're all going to be writing up.
So for me, spring training is one of my favorite times of the year, and it's because you get to wake up early, especially on the West Coast, make your bets, do the Florida slate, play the Arizona slate, and then you have the rest of your day to do whatever you want. I watch a lot of Marlins games. I watch a lot of Cardinals games out of their stadium. They share a stadium in Florida. And I have been so unimpressed with the Marlins this year. I just don't know how to put into the proper context how bad this team is. And I was talking to Gil about it a couple days ago, too. One of the things that's a kind of a major red flag for me is Derek Jeter was the president of the Marlins. He got equity in the team, and he decided to walk away from the job and the equity in a Major League Baseball franchise because for one reason or another, he understands that this is not a winning franchise. This is not a winning situation. This is not a organization that he could build a winning culture at. And I think it's crazy because walking away from equity in a pro sports team is not something that most people do. So knowing that and watching them every day, a lot of times you could say things like, well, it's spring training, they're just working out the kinks, they're getting into form, this and that. And I guess that's all the counterpoint, but I'm looking at a team that's 3-13, to start spring training, and they have a 76 win total in one of the hardest divisions in baseball, where they're most likely the second worst team if we're going to assume the Nationals are one of the worst teams in baseball. But I don't know where they're going to get all these wins from. I don't know how they're going to get to 76. And if they don't start out hot, which I don't expect them to, especially watching them all spring training, they're going to sell off some of these veterans, potentially even Cy Young winner last year, Sandy Alcantara. So I just don't see how they get to 76 wins without a lot of luck and a lot of positive variance. I'm very happy to take this at 76.5. I'm happy to take it at 75.5. I'll take it down to 75. I don't see this being the type of win total that's going to come down to one game at the end of the season. I think this is 5 or 6 games too high, and it's crazy.
And what is really crazy about the Marlins as well is how much money you could have made last season just taking all of their unders, because that was the biggest boom for me with the Miami Marlins. Their pitching is good. You mentioned Alcantara. He's rock solid. Bullpen is far from great, but it's not the worst in the world. A little bit of this is due to the fact that they do play in a ballpark that is very pitcher-friendly, but can we expect more of the same that we saw last year with just a lackluster offense and some pretty solid pitching?
Yeah, I love their pitching staff. I love Yuri Perez. I don't think he's a Rookie of the Year candidate, but I scout a lot of prospects. I read a lot of the prospect scouting, and I've heard that he is potentially the best pitching prospect the Marlins have ever had, which is incredibly high praise when you consider some of the guys that have come through the franchise, Jose Fernandez and et cetera. But, when you hear something like that, that gets your attention. I still don't see 76 wins, though. I just don't see that, especially with the balanced schedule, having to play, everybody. They're not going to get to beat up on the Nats. They're not going to get those free wins that they might have got otherwise. They're going to have to play actual teams all season.
Yeah, I remember. I think that they had a stretch of 26 out of 29 games last year where they scored 3 runs or fewer. It was just such bad offense for a pitching staff that we just mentioned it.
And I don't think they got better this year on offense. It's an assortment of low-paid veterans and guys that they're just not a well-built team. I don't like to be pessimistic, but I have a lot of complaints about the Marlins.
Yep, the home run power is not there for the Miami Marlins. That's very fair to say. And very fair to say that the biggest reason why you did come out to Las Vegas was for the first week of the NCAA tournament, which for anyone that has not come out here, it is just absolutely wild. It is so much fun just seeing this with the pandemic now behind us and in all of its glory once again, and it being, in my opinion, better than ever this year. I mean, it has been tremendous. But how did your weekend go, and what did you make out of the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament from a betting perspective?
I had some good things with the college basketball. Had a couple things I wish had gone a little better. If you've listened to me on this show throughout the season, I talked up Kansas, I talked up Kentucky, and unfortunately, neither of them made it out of the first weekend. So I'm down to one future, which is my UConn future.
I like the way they look, though.
I did like the way they look. They've always been my favorite team this year, so I'm happy that they made it through, and they were the team I was, most invested in. I'm happy that I still have that ticket. But all in all, I'm one of the many people who am going to be leaving Vegas saying I probably could have had a better college basketball weekend. Fortunately, the baseball kind of carried me through the choppiness. So, no harm done.
Absolutely. And I do think that when it comes to the NCAA tournament as well, it is one of those events where there's just so many games. There's so many just windows of games because, as we know, with the round of 64, it's wall to wall to wall to wall. You've really got 4 main walls of games, and just how important is it to stay relatively even keel and not go on tilt if things go bad early? Because I feel like if you get off to a really nice start and then you flail a little bit late, you know what? You had a good day and then you gave a little bit back. You can live with that a little bit more. But what I think is really tough is when someone has a rough start to the day and they start to get into chase mode. And I think that that's where things can start to get dangerous.
Yeah, you find yourself pressing when you lose early, and all of a sudden you're laying 4 points with the Houston Roughnecks in the NFL on Thursday night. I've definitely been there myself. It does hurt when you lose on Thursday in the tournament, and it's a long weekend. You could even see today, Sunday, the book had thinned out a little bit during the day. People are kind of done with betting by Sunday sometimes, but we just kept going. It's a long weekend, like you said. You got to pace yourself. The betting is just nonstop between the baseball, the exhibition, WBC. There were so many golf tournaments this week. There was Valspar, there was Senior Tour Golf. There was just stuff going on. Live, constantly stuff to pivot to. So it was a nonstop betting weekend. It was a lot of fun. This is the kind of stuff I really live for, is to the high volume weeks when you get to party and hang out with your friends and come to Vegas. So it was a good week. Little bit of profit, nothing to really complain about. Another great week at Circa.
That's good. And I mean, the next bad week at Circa that I hear is going to be one of the first ones, because with Stadium Swim, everything that it has to offer, all the great people around here, I mean, it is such a great time in general. But in terms of the Sweet 16 games, are there any of these that really stand out to you, and perhaps a bet or two that you're going to be making on your way out? Because I do think that we've got a really nice blend of teams that play up-tempo, teams that play slow, some big dogs, some Cinderellas, and I do think that lends for some very interesting matchups.
I like UCLA. I saw they already moved from 1 to 2. I'm gonna miss the 1 by the time I get a chance to bet it. I probably still will take the 2. I like to fade Gonzaga.
Think a lot of 1.5s in Vegas as well.
Team 1.5. All right, so I'll probably get a 1.5 tonight. The other game I like is Princeton. I saw they're getting 10 points. I agree. I was really impressed with Princeton the first 2 rounds. They were a money-making machine if you bet them.
Yeah, with Princeton, I mean, they do such a good job on the glass. We know that they're smart kids, so there is that aspect of it. But, I mean, with this Crane team as well, they are a team that they don't necessarily have a ton of depth. I don't feel like you need a ton of it when it comes to the NCAA tournament, but I always get a little bit of pause when you've got a team that relies heavily on their starting 5, because you never know when foul trouble is going to hit, and if you can't go to the bench for at least one quality player, sort of like the case is for Creighton, I do think that puts you in a little bit of a danger zone.
Yeah, I'm still going to take the 10. I think they showed me enough to take them as a double-digit dog here. But, I'm really excited. Sweet 16 should be wall-to-wall. Pretty good matchups, it looks like.
I agree with you because that is one that I think is going to be a fascination because I think that there's a lot of people that didn't see a ton of Princeton during the regular season. They've been a team that has actually done a better job with their defense when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. So that always piques my interest. You mentioned the Gonzaga versus UCLA game. Going to be the third time in 3 years that they match up in some form or capacity, and second straight year that they actually match up in Las Vegas. They had a regular season game out here, so much great action. And Jason, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Always fun to be in the studio at VEASAN. I love it. Hi, Mom.
Visit VEASAN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VEASAN sports betting podcasts.